number one source, Sports Card Nation. The hobby is the people. Sports Card Nation.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to episode 375, Sports Card Nation. As always, glad to be back. Hope you enjoyed the Super Bowl. Not the greatest Super Bowl of all time. Actually, pretty boring by Super Bowl standards, but I do believe the best team won the game. Congratulations to the Seattle Seahawks on their second Super Bowl ring. Glad to have my guest on, who I consider a good friend in the hobby. She's back again. I believe this is her second appearance on the show. I could be wrong. She's also my hobby hotline teammates, one of them of the 16, and Lauren Rizzo Shaffer, and very talented young lady. She's a dealer along with her husband Brian, like myself, and so we're going to talk a little bit about being a dealer, traveling, how do you get your stuff there, all that fun stuff. But we're going to chop up some hobby as well. So it's been a little bit before we had her on. I figure it's a good time to kind of catch back up. So she is today's guest, and I'm very happy to have her on the show. Always enjoy having the next guest on the Sports Card Nation podcast. She's been on here before, and hopefully she'll come back even after this episode again. But always a pleasure, and I consider her a very good friend. Lauren Rizzo Shaffer. Lauren goes here. Welcome back, as always.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be back.
Yeah, thank you is more than thank me. So, you're pretty active in the hobby. You're a teammate of mine on Hobby Hotline. There, I always say, glad to have you amongst the six folks that we do have involved in that show. Now you're a veteran. I think the last time or the one you were more newer, but now you're one of the vets and do a great job. And just kind of where the hobby is right now. Like is the hobby in a healthy place? I know it's doing well, and sometimes I think you agree with this, Lauren. I think sometimes we put too much emphasis on the dollar signs, and obviously it's doing well if we look at it just from that perspective. And I'm not trying to say that it's not important, but to me, it's got to be more than that. Like, how do you see where we are right now here as we start 2026?
I think we're in a pretty good spot. I just went to the first card show of the year in Dallas, the Dallas Card Show, and we set up and we had a great time, and it was packed. There were so many people there. So I think, if you want an indication of interest, that was definitely there at the Dallas Card Show, which is a great show to go to. So for it to be the first card show of the year and for people to come out and be excited and be active, I think we're off to a good start, at least for 2026.
Yeah, no doubt. And shows, that's we could do a show on shows, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I did shows, and we've talked about this even on Hobby Hotline itself, right? We're getting a lot more shows. We're getting them in countries that haven't had them before. We're getting them. It's not even a national thing necessarily, but we're even getting shows in smaller cities that never had them here in the States and not just abroad. Do you think there's a point? And I guess the easy answer is to say, well, we'll get to that point when people stop going to them. But do you think there's a tipping the scales points where there can be too many shows too often?
I'm sure it's possible, but I think we're a long way off from that. Personally, I think also different shows serve different purposes. Like we go to not a ton of shows, but we set up quite a few, and we've been to, Fanatics Fest, which is a, festival with a card show. We've been to National now and set up. We've been to Dallas Card Show many times. It's our favorite. We've been to the West Coast Card Show. And they all are different. They all have different energy. They have different crowds. They have different purposes. They have different scopes. So I think I personally, if it is possible, which nothing's impossible, I think we're a long way off from that. I think everybody who puts on a card show right now that is able to do it again knows that it's grueling and it's I mean the Culture Collision show. It's a new show and it's doing really well. And they, we're starting to expand to more shows, more than one a year. And it's hard. And Raphael works really hard to make that show successful. And I think it's necessary. I think that people like Raphael saw that there was a need, and he filled that need. And so I think that I think like with a lot of things in the hobby, if it's not done well or it's not done with good intention, it won't last. So I think that there may be one day too many card shows, but I think the ones that serve a great purpose for a great amount of people, they'll always thrive. They'll always be there. So
How many shows are you getting to as a consumer where you're not necessarily set up and you're just going to take it in, buy cards, sell whatever? And how many are you doing as a dealer, as I do as well?
most of the time we are setting up as a dealer. We have a camper and we, take road trips and stuff. So there are times where a lot of the time when we're just going to a card show, just walking around, checking it out, not setting up, it's when we're on the road and, the timing is just right that we've hit when there are card shows close to us. So majority of the shows we're setting up, and where I'm at, there actually was a card show this past weekend. But where I'm at in Central Florida, we don't have a big card community. We don't have a big card show. So, so this one we didn't set up. It was mostly TCG. So I think that was part of it. But also it wasn't advertised super well. I live here and I didn't know anything about it until like 2 days before because my local hobby shop was sponsoring the trade night. That's how I found out. So, most of the shows we go to, we do set up as a dealer, but we do like to just kind of cruise around and see and feel out like, what it's like at different shows. Cause it's also just fun. It's just fun to see like what different crowds are like, what different people are collecting, what they have to show, like, and just talk to people. My favorite time to talk to people is at card shows. When we're set up because it's very easy. You have a very easy in for a conversation and, and nobody feels bad like cutting the conversation short or moving on. So I know I'm like taking this question to a totally different place, but
No, go ahead, by all means.
yeah, just I like better when we're set up because I feel like I'm actually like serving a purpose when I'm talking to somebody. But we do like to just go check out card shows, walk around, just see. Brian goes with very strong intention. He likes to go and be like with a purpose. Whereas I'm like, yeah, cards. Like obviously I want to be in a room full of people and cards. So, but most of the time we're set up, but he's the main, seller guy. So I get to kind of like walk around more often than I used to. Now I'm the security. I'm top dog security for us. So I have to stay at the table now, but yeah, I like setting up more at shows than anything for me. So
Yeah, and you're lucky. See, as a dealer myself, and I set up. Now I'm usually set up with some friends of mine and hobby acquaintances. Well, so if I really wanted to, like, obviously got to use the restroom or what have you,
right.
but if I wanted to walk around, I probably can. I can, but sometimes it gets tricky because then I have my SGC like bulk subber table, and that's
Mhm.
usually pretty hopping. So I don't get to walk around as much as I'd like to, and I don't know, that might be good and bad. It probably saves me some money, stays in my wallet rather than
Right.
getting funneled out. As a dealer, talking to a dealer, um, has your approach changed with how you do shows as you do them?
Yeah, I guess I think like with anything, especially in the hobby, you just kind of learn what feels right. So we've done enough Dallas card shows that it's like we have our routine. We know what works. And if we're flying, it's different than if we're driving with the camper, but we have, routine and we kind of hone it in. So yeah, I did. I will say I sat next to somebody this last card show. He was sharing the table with the guy who's next to us all the time, and he's newer to the hobby, and he'd never set up before, and he just had one case, but he had a bunch of stuff. But he was new, so he was still figuring things out. But we talked, and he talked to a lot of people, a lot of content creators that were coming through. He expressed like gratitude to them. He learned a lot from them, whatever. But um, I got to share a little bit of knowledge too in talking to him while we were there. And one of the things I told him is, and it was late Saturday, so we'd already been set up Thursday, Friday, all day Saturday. It was slammed at Dallas, which was great. But it was later in the day on Saturday, and I told him that one of the things I used to do that I don't do anymore, I used to greet everybody who like stopped and paused at our table. I used to say, hi, how's it going to everybody? And that's not sustainable for me anymore. So I told him, I said, I'm polite, I pay attention, but I'm not like, I don't like ask how you're doing and like try to, I try not to treat everybody like a customer in a shop. I try to let them breathe now. If they're just walking, because sometimes they're just checking things out and, you get them kind of roped into a conversation. They feel like they can't leave or whatever. But also for me, it drains so much of my energy. And then I'm just spent and I can't like think or process as well as I'd like. So I told him, I said, you get better about your social battery and kind of lending it out. So that's one thing that's not like a tangible card thing. I think that for us, I've definitely adapted that. Like if I want to have the energy to like also then go to trade night or to see my other friends or to go look at cards myself, I can't expend my social battery on every person that walks by. So
Yeah, and especially on multi-day shows, even
mhm,
even more so, right? Which I don't really that we don't have them in this area like we used to. So most of the shows I'm setting up with are just it's that day and that's it, right? So I can get away with talking a little bit more than if that was a 2 to 3 Friday, Saturday type show, or even Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 4 day show. So I fully get that. And I compare people to, and maybe this is not the greatest analogy, Lauren, but like it's an Uber ride, right? If you ever were an Uber driver or a rider, right? Some people get in and they want to talk like from the jump street. Let's go. Hey, how's your day? What how's business? Is you busy today? And then you have other riders that like they're in their phone. They don't want
mhm,
any of the chit chat. And I think sort of like the show is like that with people attending the show, right? And I think through the years, and I've done this a long time, I did my first show in 1987 at 15 years old. And when I first started, I'll make this story short, but I get longer. I had no bedside manner, so I didn't talk. I was a shy 15-year-old, so I didn't
you were
have
shy?
anybody. I was shy.
I don't
Yep.
believe you.
To the
I'm
point,
sorry,
to
I
the
do
point,
not.
Lauren. I know that some people listen to the show religiously. Like we heard the story, Newman. Stop telling. But I'll give you the clip now. One of the first few shows I did, I didn't even like say how you doing. Can I help you? I sat there and I had a baby face. I was younger, and I remember a few people would say, "Hey, when your dad, there's a card I'm interested. When your dad gets back, I'd like to talk to him, see if he can do a little bit better price wise." And I'd have to say, my squeaky voice, like, "No, this is my stuff." Oh,
Mhm,
really? They were taking it back because I didn't say anything. I just sat there. So they just figured my dad or whoever I
mhm,
was with was in the bathroom or not behind the table at them. I've obviously honed that skill and I'm not that shy kid anymore. But one thing I've gotten better at is kind of what you said, right? Is sort of pacing myself and also knowing, and you learn by trial and error, right? Sometimes you say to someone, how you doing? How's it going today? Is there anything particular you're looking for? And you can tell, like, I didn't really want to be approached. And sometimes they'll, no, I'm good. And they don't stay long and they leave. They didn't really want, I know it sounds goofy, but they didn't really want that sort of conversation. Some people feel more comfortable just kind of looking at what you're offering in your showcases without feeling like you're right there above
right.
them, like watching what they're looking at. And it's one skill I think I've improved. No one's perfect, but just through trial and error, I kind of know those kind of folks, right? and I sort of let them sort of set the tone. If they come to the table and they look up at me as almost if to, like make a verbal, like, greeting, or not, or nonverbal greeting, then I might say, "Hey, how's it going today? You enjoying the show?" Whatever the
Right.
banter is. But I've gotten a good job of, I've done a better job of like reading body language and taking those cues to
Mhm.
know those that are looking for that, and those who, hey, don't say nothing to me. I'm just going to look at the cards. If I want something, I'll let you know. So,
Mhm.
and there's nothing wrong with either person. Different styles, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And I've gotten better at like telling those two types of personalities. Sometimes maybe you swing and miss, but I think I swung and miss a lot more in my earlier years as a dealer than I do now. And what's I don't want to say it's hurt me, but now with doing the SGC bulk table, I've lost some of the opportunities to do that even when someone wants that. And
Right.
those that know, most people who know me know, like if I'm busy at that table, I'm not ignoring them.
Right.
And I'm usually set up again with a buddy of mine who can make a sale while I'm busy there, and then we can just kind of once we get a moment, he'll hand me that sale money, and hey, that sold there or whatever. So if there's a negative to doing that, that might be it. But most people understand that I'm not doing it intentionally. I just can't get
Right.
to them at the moment. And I'm also blessed to have friends that are set up near me that can kind of help me. And sometimes they remind me like, "You owe me dinner, Newman. I'm doing more work than you are." So, but you do the shows, and when you go to shows as a consumer and a dealer, I think you even know both, right? Because I'm a guy, I'm a pricer, and the reason I price all my stuff is because when I'm a consumer and I'm just at a show going from table to table, it's a pet peeve of mine, if you will. I don't like when stuff's not priced. I hate that.
Mhm.
Maybe that's still that little shyness in me. I don't like to ask, like, how much is this? How much is this? Right? Especially if there's multiple cards you might be
Right.
interested in. I get why some people don't price stuff because, as we both know, things can change very quickly. But that's what a price gun's for. You can price over the
Yeah.
other one higher or lower, right? But I'm a pricer. I think most people, human nature, don't like to see it without having. I think, and I did a poll on one of my social medias a couple years ago. Like, do you rather see a showcase with prices on it or not? And I think it was 80% want to see priced cards rather than not priced. So I've sort of taken that, my own sort of personal preference. And again, even if you price your stuff and if someone perceives it as being high, they really want it, they can say, John, like,
Exactly.
I'm
Yep.
interested in, can you do better? I think you're a little, and most people will tell you, like, hey, the comps on this is this.
Yeah.
You've heard,
Right.
and that doesn't bother me. I get it. It's part of the process. It's part
Right.
of the fun. Some people get perturbed by that. I look at it as part of the process and fun.
Yeah.
And I don't take it personal, especially if it's done in a respectful sort of way, right?
Right.
Time for a quick break, but we'll be right back.
For nearly 50 years, Sports Collectors Digest has been the voice of the hobby, bringing you comprehensive coverage of the sports collectible industry. From industry news, auction results, market analysis, and in-depth stories about collectors and their collections, Sports Collectors Digest has everything you need to know about the hobby. SCD is also your leading source for listings of sports collectible dealers, card shops, card shows, and the latest from the industry's top companies. To check out all the latest news or to subscribe to the hobby's oldest magazine, visit sportscollectorsdigest.com or call 1-800-829-5561.
Thanks for sticking with us. Let's return to the show.
I'm not a big fan when someone says, let me get your take on it. When someone says, well, the guy over there has it for that. And then it's like,
Yeah.
it's like tit for, like, now it's like a battle between me and this other guy. Like, you can say, hey, I can get it for it. Like, I have an opportunity, but it's almost like that guy's better than you. and maybe he's better price, But I always, and I'm like, well, why didn't you buy it? He goes, well, then if they can might redeem themselves, well, I like you better. I'd rather buy it from. And if I can do that, So again, everything can go one way or the other, but as long as someone uses some tact, that's. But I'm a pricer. What's your kind of take? Weigh in on that sort of aspect of being a dealer.
Yeah, I mean, because most of the table, like some of my stuff is mixed in, but my husband takes the lead. Brian takes the lead, and it's most of his, stuff. And he will price it before the show and, get it all ready. And sometimes one will slip in or he'll do a trade. And then we have, and it's always when he steps away for whatever reason. And it's, it turns from 3 minutes into 20 into 30 minutes. And they always want to know the one card in the case that I don't have a price for. And I'm texting him, and then the service is bad. I'm not getting a response. And I also can't look it up myself because the service is bad. And like that whole thing. So from both sides of the table, like the cards to be priced because I like to have an idea too. Like we've been doing more wrestling. We used to do a lot of like high-end I'm the security, big dog, but we did a lot of like high-end basketball. We love basketball, and my husband's been doing this since he was a small kid, so he knows it through and through. He was opening some of this stuff, and now it's, like 5-6 figures. So he knows it backwards and forwards. And now we're doing more WWE and wrestling alongside, a smaller offering of the high-end basketball. And I'm much more comfortable with the WWE. I am much more comfortable with the pricing on that, the history on that, the understanding on that. So, and also it's a different breed. I don't know so much about, like between baseball, basketball, football, the differences there. I know like one difference is, with football, a lot of times it's week to week. Things happen, somebody gets taken out for the season and prices change immediately. So I know like that's one characteristic of football. But with WWE, it's kind of more based on like what you're feeling. It's based more on vibes. And I like that because you can kind of like interact with people, and there is a market. So you do, follow like, pricing, but it doesn't dip crazy like football. They don't get crazy, crazy high like basketball yet anyway. So circling back, I like pricing the cards out because then I at least have like a mental starting point. And I think for I think consistently across any, any sport, TCG, whatever, personally, I think pricing is important because it gets you, like I said, a starting point. It's the seed that germinates into where are we going from here. If it's way too high and you're like, I know they're pricing it that high because they must have some ulterior motive and I don't want to engage with that, that's fine. Or they're pricing it that high because maybe they don't want to let go of it, but maybe they will in the future. So if we talk about it, they might remember me, and we can, down the line, we might have a deal on our hands. So I feel like pricing is an important part of the process on both sides of the table. And so I like that. When I see that there aren't prices, I'm similarly like, I don't know if I really want to go there because I feel like then I have to like, then invest time into it. And do I really want to? Whatever. It just, I can do the mental
Listen,
math.
and be honest, right? You always, when someone doesn't price their cards and you're interested in something, and you do ask them, like, hey, well, how much is that in that? You're always fearful that price is going to be high because you've already shown your hand. It's like poker,
Right.
right?
Right.
So if that price is like not even like ballpark of kind of where you want to be, now you feel kind of funny.
Right.
Because like you just said, if it's way too high, at least in your opinion, right? You feel like you don't even want to make an offer because it's not going to. You also don't want to be insensitive or
Right.
insulting.
Mm-hmm.
And so then you're like, so they say the price, and you're not even in the same arena, and then you sort
Right.
of walk away, and you feel, at least I do. I feel like, man, like you feel like there's judgment going sort of both ways, right? And that's not always a comfortable situation. Where if it's priced, you
Right.
know, like, hey, this is sort of, it's not where I want to be, but it's close enough where I
Mm-hmm.
can at least initiate a conversation and say, hey, can you do better on that? Or what's your best price? Right. And then maybe meet halfway. You know, I think
Right.
most negotiations can be, consummated when there's a little a halfway point. When there's
Mm-hmm.
no price and you ask, and that, if you want to say that non-sticker shock, and then it's sort of, if it's a weird place to be in because you're like, okay, thanks, and then you walk,
Right. Yeah.
away, right? Or you start to walk away. And I've had someone say, maybe it's someone that knows me, like, John, what, or hey, what do you want? Like, what are you thinking? And then I'm like, I remember I've said this, like, I don't think we're close enough. That's my
Right.
polite way of saying, like, you're a little higher than I want to be, and you don't want, it's their car. They can put $1,000,000 on
Mm-hmm.
it, like, and you just the same, you don't have to buy it if you don't like, but it's always a weird place to be in because you're sort of in a negotiation and it may not be able to, complete it. You don't want hurt feelings necessarily.
Right.
But what are you going to do, right? You do the best you can. But yeah, that's one of the reasons I price. And I put a little sign on my showcases, like, if you're interested in something, let me know. It's more or less me saying, like, it's just like you said, it's a starting point. It's not the end
Mm-hmm.
all be all necessarily. And most people will do that, and that helps. But some people are, you know, just if they don't like the price, they're not going to even haggle with them. You got to keep that in mind. I have a bargain box, and I put, discounted cards in there, if you will. And someone found a card that had marked $5, and they're like, John, this is like a $60 card, and I'm like, okay. They're like, are you going to sell it for? And it was
Right.
very nice on their part. They were like giving me a heads up, like,
Right.
you want to change the price? And I'm like, no, I mispriced it in your favor. Good
Right.
cut, good catch by you. To the victor goes the spoils, right? You're
Yeah.
going to sell it. They said you're going to sell it for $5. I'm like, yeah, that's what it's marked. And they bought it. And they're like, the guy told me, like, I'm shocked that you didn't take that back and, like, reprice. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
I'd be mad if I was you and you were me
Right.
and you did that.
Exactly.
I would be mad. And they were very, they're like, well, that's really refreshing that you honored that price, And I'm like,
Yeah.
hey, you got a nice card, a nice story to go along with it.
Right. Exactly.
And that stuff goes a long way. You know what I mean? It's more than just even in the moment. And so, if I price it and you get a deal on it, good for you. You
Yep.
know, and I'm getting older, so that's more likely to happen.
Right.
Now, Lauren, I tell people that I gotta look in that box because I might have made a few other, good
Right.
mistakes.
Yeah. That's when you pull the box back and you're like, I got to go through it again.
And I see that's
We're
my
good
thing.
here.
I
Future
I
deal.
don't really do that, Lauren, with those type of boxes. It is what it is.
Right.
And and here's my thing. That's why it's called a bargain. You're getting a bargain, right?
Yeah.
And so I leave it as as being. And we know, look at like someone like Sam Darnold, right? He was a hot rookie when he first came in the league. Then he became a journeyman, 5 different teams,
Mhm.
was in the bargain box. Now he's the hot, and he's there. I think Seattle's going to win the Super Bowl, so he's going to
Yeah.
have a ring
Looking like it.
as a starting quarterback. So there's that happens all the time, more often than we think it does, right?
Yep.
Baker Mayfield went from penthouse to the outhouse, back to the penthouse. Now he's
Mhm.
somewhere in between, and I know those are two football guys, but that happens in other sports as well. So if someone finds someone that's on the uptick, and I priced it when they were on the downtick, you did your home, you did your
Yep.
diligence. You went through the box and found it, and again, to the victors go the spoil. So I always honor those prices. To sometimes people surprise, and I've had that happen more than once. Maybe not a $60 card for $5, but I've had people tell me, "Hey, this is marked a buck. It's $20." Like, okay,
Right.
you can give me $1, you can give me $20, whatever makes you feel better. Usually
Yep.
I get $1. So, but that's just that's my sort of MO, if you will. There, we'll kind of close out the the dealer segment, if you will. You mentioned like you go with your RV kind of to show sometimes. You mentioned like sometimes having to fly and set up. I always intrigued by the logistics of that. I've never set up at a show where I've flown to the show. Now I've flown to shows and I'm just there,
Right.
as a consumer. How do you do that? Is everything on the plane with you? Do you ship? What are the logistics in the shows where that's how you?
Yeah, when we fly, we do not check bags. We don't like checking bags when we travel anyway. So it gets a little hairy when, we're trying to pack, and all we have is, a carry-on each and a personal item, and we have a card case on wheels. And, this last show, Brian had to bring his Scion case on wheels, and that was his carry-on. And then we had another one that I was carrying by hand, and it was tough. I asked ahead of time. I'm like, what are we gonna do? Because he can shove most of his stuff into a backpack, and I'm like, I can't because he's bald. So like he doesn't need a hairbrush. If he does, he borrows mine. I need things like that. And so I was like, I'm gonna need a suitcase. Like we can make this work, but like heads up, I can't shove everything into like a grocery bag and be good to go. And we made it work. We keep everything with us though. We don't check bags. We keep it with us, and it's just the cards basically. We don't. He had some small signs made that we were putting up that we could the retractable ones. So sometimes we'll bring those, but we did not have room for those this time. But he brings all the card stuff, and then I try to pack things that will come in handy. I have like a little kit that's like, this will come in handy. We might not need it, but it's better if we do. Pens, sleeves, Post-its, different things like that. Tylenol, because we're getting old. Hand sanitizer, like little things like that are like his head's on pricing cards and where are the cards and what cards or whatever. And so I get to do kind of like the backup stuff of like, well, this is gonna probably be important, so you're gonna be panicking in the moment, and I'll be able to just hand you, the pen when you're looking for one. So we just kind of meet in the middle on the needs, and he, I try to let him focus. He does not like flying, so he gets really stressed on the plane. So I try to also do things to like ease that tension. But it's not for us. It's not too bad. We've kind of got it down to a science. It gets a little tough when like we start opening product. Like if we had a long day, but we had a good day and we're leaving and we walk by and there's some wax on the way out the door, and we're like, yeah, let's just open, this tonight. But then the next night it's the same thing. And then we have to buy, a row, a box, and like, okay, well, we got it now, but will it fit on the way home? And somehow we always manage. But yeah, the camper's nice because Brian has we have what we need to get things done, and, we can still do eBay and stuff. So that's nice because it's not as like, oh, I forgot this, I can't go. Like we can just run back to the camper if, we need something or we need extra, or if we don't want to have that on us. But yeah, it's really, the flying it's what we did this last time, and it was easy because we were in and out. With the camper, it's like, it's not the end of the journey. We're not in and out because we like have had a journey. We got there, we're doing this, and then we have to keep going on. So, but yeah, flying is not too bad for us. We just kind of keep it light. We keep it, we try to stay focused, and hopefully we're leaving with more than, we came with. And luckily that was the case this last time.
Yeah, let me tell you about Tylenol. You get my age, and I take it preemptively. I don't
Yes,
wait till I need it.
Yeah.
I'm doing it like ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
It always amazes me too, Lauren, because I talk to dealers, and I've talked to some, and this, that will say, hey, I ship it ahead. Like I'll ship some of my inventory.
Mm-hmm.
Like I might have it on some of the bigger money items on my carry-on, but I have a lot more stuff, and I'll ship it to the venue or to someone in that town. And man, that would make me so nervous. Not to whoever I'm shipping it to, but just that if it gets lost. And you hear horror stories now, right? That whether it be a FedEx driver or you postal service worker steal, and not even stealing, but it just gets lost, or
Yep.
the truck explodes, and like
Yeah.
there goes your whole inventory. And I know there's insurance, I have it, but it's like any insurance, right? You never want to use it. And
Right.
if you ever had to file a claim, insurance companies don't always just say, "Hey, how much do we owe you?" "Oh, here's a check." You fill it in yourself,
Right.
right? They're going to negotiate like, "Oh, we think this was valued at that," and you're going to say, "No, it's a PSA 8," and that's what they
Right.
go for. Well, we looked it up, and that sort of thing. So you hope it never comes to that. And so shipping, that would make me very nervous, but people
Yeah,
do
same.
it. And they're like, when I ask them, like, "Are you nervous when you do that?" And they're like, "You darn well right I'm nervous, but we've got to do it, right? And just hope nothing ever happens." But, even like the SEC, I'm sending people's very expensive cards to Boca Raton, Florida, and I'm nervous until I get that, notification that they arrive safely. And then I'm nervous when they're graded and they're on their way back that time, right? So, shipping is what it is, right? We've heard some of the things that can happen, and you just hope you hope it's somebody. Well, you hope it never happens, and then you hope when it does, it's not you. So,
Right.
I always when I talk to people at the National, and they got 20 showcases, and half of them like drove, and then the other half's like, I'm like, "Did you drive with all this stuff?" "No, I flew." I'm like, "How'd you get?" "I shipped it in." And like, holy smokes, man, you're braver than me,
Yeah.
So but I love those sort of the stories behind the stories, like how does the logistics work here, and then they got to ship it back to the home too, right? It's not a one.
I couldn't do it. I couldn't endure that.
You got to be nervous again. You got to be nervous twice when you're shipping to and fro. So God bless them, and hope obviously there's no bad stories there. But I had the brothers from Vegas on that are dealers, and they told me one year their luggage, not their cards, but their luggage got lost, so they had no clothes for a day.
Right.
Or imagine that's cards, right? You know what I mean? So if you're checking.
Hope you enjoyed part 1 of our conversation with Lauren there. We will continue next Friday with part 2. And, since I've done these 2-part episodes, it's made the episodes shorter, which are more consumable. I hope you're finding that to your satisfaction. I also try to make it where if you happen to listen to a part 2 first, that you can still go back and listen to part 1 and not be kind of discombobulated, kind of all still flow. So next week, Lauren returns for more great hobby conversation, and hope you join us. So now we're going to hear from our Hobby is the People announcer of the week. Got quite a few of those, 30-something different ones, but if you want to be part of the show, like the ad says, mail us an MP3 or WAV file, and we'll get you as part of the show.
Time for our Hobby is the People announcer of the week.
Hey everyone, this is Alex here from Relics Cards and Collectibles in Toronto, representing the Relics squad. I just want to remind everyone, the hobby is the people.
If you'd like to be the Hobby is the People announcer of the week, do a WAV or MP3 file and send it to sportscardnationpc@gmail.com.